Welcome to week 7, the week in which the marketing mixes are introduced, and the week in which the first of the philosophical issues of applying social marketing to a pragmatic solution come into effect. So, what you're going to end up doing with this week is being handed a series of component parts which you need to then construct into a single unified product offer. What I recommend is that you adopt one of these marketing mixes. One of the things I will say is that the marketing mix is one of the heavily researched and well-resourced areas, so when you do adopt a mix, you won't have any problems finding references to support your arguments. There are many and varied arguments, resources, data sets, and articles that talk about the role of the mix, the importance of the mix, what you do with the mix, as a commercial marketer and as a social marketer. So there's no excuse to be coming out the end of this going, well, I couldn't find anything, when there is plenty to be found. So that's going to be one of your key things here is, now we're in the marketing mix section, there's more theory for you to draw on and to learn from and to help you get the job done far more easily than if you have to try and create things from scratch. And this is where we go now from, there was a social marketing problem, we now create a social marketing solution. And solutions are important as an idea that they are a composite. Solutions are what the audience and the marketplace deals with. We don't deal with the individual components. So in a metaphorical sense, this is the marketing mix. This is a marketing mix. It is the components, the component parts. The thing about the marketing mix is that you can use these component parts to create the value offer. However, if you isolate each part of the mix and treat it as an independent and separate item, you can't create the overall value offer. So if you were planning on working in a group and part of your group work plan was to work in a team of 4 and one person takes each part of the mix, this would be baking a cake by one person getting the flour, someone else getting the eggs, third person getting the sugar, and a fourth person getting a handful of component parts left over, each of you individually cooking, mixing, creating, and generating something from your own parts, and then blending the lot together at the end. Or possibly not even doing that, just presenting the different component parts on a plate saying, it's a cake. We're not into postmodern deconstructed marketing here. We're into blending the hell out of things. So, it's marketing mix time, and the mixes are just that. They apply together. They're not independent component parts. They are a combination effect. They influence each other. This week, we'll talk about the individual elements of a mix. Subsequent weeks and subsequent areas of the course will get you to examine how one element interacts with its component parts, its other elements, so we get a sense for how the total operation works together. And now it's time for some marketing mixes. First on the deck is the 1960 McAfee classic marketing mix. Opens up with the well-known pride of place 4 Ps of marketing. We start in this area, I start from price, because price is this concept of the total cost, financial and non-financial, that the individual needs to incur in order to access, acquire, or use the product. Key here is price represents the costs to the consumer. It has nothing to do with the costs we incur as producers. If you take your focus away from what it is to cost to the consumer and start thinking about yourself, you're headed into production orientation. It's never good for you, and it's one of the most common traps in marketing. People will think customer orientation all the way through. They'll get to price, and suddenly it'll all be about the organization. Don't fall for it. Product. This is our intent. This is our offering. It is big. It's the big conceptual domain. It can be anything, so long as it meets a need, provides a solution, or can be used in the process of creating something else that can provide a solution. That's a product. We'll go into depth and detail a bit later, but this opens it up so that ideas, behaviors, experiences, physical goods, services, these are all viable products. It's not products and services, it's goods and services. Product is the all-encompassing what it is that we're offering to the marketplace. Promotion. This is the talk at and listen to arm of the marketing mix. It's deliberate, it's planned, it's controlled, and it's what we do to engage with the customer. Hence, deliberate, planned, and controlled. There are multiple subcomponents of promotion, so they get their own territory. Social marketing has a propensity, because one of our rival disciplines is literally called health promotion, to be a bit overzealous when it comes to the application of the promotion arm of the business. So I really emphasize putting promotion near to the end or as the last set of decisions. You are intentionally communicating something that you have priced and created elsewhere, so your communication must align with the offer you've made, the price it is, and the distribution points that can be found. Place. This is distribution by another name. It is the mechanisms required to get the product to market or the market to the product. It's one of the biggest territorial domains in terms of it regards every part of the process. So if you're using a physical good, then promotion only talks about what that good is. Place talks about the production, the supply chain, the value chain, all the elements leading up to the creation of this object, and then talks about getting that object into the hands of the end user. So it's a much bigger, more complex area than, say, some of the other elements. The second mix is the Cedar mix. As one of the few people who actually took Cedar seriously and took it on board immediately, it was on offer, having worked with this framework since 2005, this is a customer-sided framework. It works as a way to see the world, not from the organisational view of what levers can we pull, what control buttons do we have, but to see it from the other aspect of how does the customer engage. So the solution is the value the customer creates for themselves by consuming the offer made by the organisation. Now you'll note here it's very nebulous. This isn't product. The value that the customer creates can be multiple components. It can be elements of price, it can be elements of distribution, it can be elements of promotion. So it's not as simple as just a straight substitution. It's not a sideways substitution. Information. This is the controlled and the uncontrolled. This is what the customer knows about the marketer, the marketing offer, the product, the brand, the organisation, the meanings. And because it varies, it's an An area that actually suits social media and the modern technology more than promotion does, perhaps, because it acknowledges that elements are variable, that there are components that shift and change versus promotion, which is very much deliberate controlled communication. So here, this includes anything that the customer knows from other customers, as well as intentional deliberate marketing communications. Value. See if it has a little bit of a definitional looseness when they say solution is the value that the customer creates for themselves, and then comes back and mentions value. But value here plays the role of cost and reward. So it's the potential, actual, and future cost. It's the total sacrifice the consumer needs to make to get access to the bundle of benefits from the solution. And it's the total costs subtracted from the total benefits of the solution. If that comes out as costs are less, it costs less and you gain more, it's a good product. Access is both a combination of product and delivery. Accessibility is that whole idea that if you have a solution, you need to deliver it to the customer at a point that the customer can access when the customer needs to access it. Plus, once they have the product, they need to be able to access the embedded solution in the product. So we're looking at this from the point of view of if a product is too complex to use, the solution fails because the access doesn't take place. If the product doesn't do the job you expect it to, it requires something, a consumable object to make it work, and that object isn't there. It's for everybody who's ever bought a product and the charging cable wasn't included in the box. So, or every printer manufacturer who makes a printer and doesn't include the printer cable in there. Access is denied. So access is an important element to this because it's a composition of can the solution be made available? Does the solution exist? Does the consumer know enough through their information on how to access the solution? Is the effort they're going to have to expend to access that solution greater or lesser than the benefits they'll receive? If so, then access is taking place. So back to a classic, the 7 Ps of marketing. We're throwing in our bonus level. This is out of services marketing. Unsurprisingly, the icon of services marketing, Bittner, is in play. It's kind of a major services marketing theory was said. Bittner is behind it. The 3 elements that we are interested in are the add-on pack of process. And this is in a service delivery, the flow of activities by which the service is delivered. This is the protocols, the procedures, the behind the scenes, the skills required, the training, and the co-creation elements of the customer playing their role in the delivery. Process can work for behaviors as well, by the way. People, these are the humans who are involved. Yeah, these are the people who are involved in people. Any human interaction in the service. Computerized interaction in the service goes into process. Human interaction goes into people. And if there's an animal involved, process. Or possibly physical evidence. Mostly process. The people element is also about the subjectivity because it involves the customer and how the customer interacts in the service, as well as how other customers are in place and how the whole service dynamic, interpersonal dynamic, operates in this environment. In physical evidence, we come across the tangible parts of a service that aren't the core service product itself. Social marketing has a lot of opportunity to use physical evidence to support ideas and to support behaviors. So there's a lot to be gained from examining the extended services marketing mix in social marketing, particularly if you're going to evidence around an idea or a behavior, physical embodiments of the behavior. So you want to transmit an idea to an audience. Pamphlets become the distribution channel and the physical evidence simultaneously. A YouTube video explaining how to perform the behavior becomes an item of evidence, digital evidence. That's possibly the extension to the mix that's required now, is digital evidence alongside physical elements. There is another marketing mix. Lauterborn's 1990 4 Cs. I will preface this by saying Lauterborn, strangely enough, was also involved with Don Schultz, who was responsible for the creation of Cedar. So Lauterborn and Schultz have both had a crack at replacing the marketing mix. Lauterborn comes at this from a PR, public relations, communications angle. Other element, when you look at this paper, you're very much seeing someone who's comms and comms element, advertising driven, real message structure here in what they're looking for and what they're trying to achieve. So there are 4 components. You can only sell what someone specifically wants to buy, just customer wants and needs. Now the caveat on this obviously has to be that there is latent demand, there is unrecognized needs, there's the whole idea of you can only sell something that someone specifically wants to buy. This is very much on the assumption you already have the audience or you already have the product. But mostly this is really audience-led, so existing audiences. The cost element there is both price and value and access merged. Again, they're focusing on what does it cost to satisfy the want or need. It does have the advantage of extending the idea that your product alone may not be the sum total solution that someone's going to go for, so you can be part along the way. If you are selling the drinks for a dinner and drinks package, then you are only a partial solution to what somebody is looking for on a night out, but you are still a necessary part of that solution. So cost here is not just financial, it's also the non-financial elements. Now convenience is interesting because it brings both cost and it brings distribution and segmentation. So convenience to buy is how does the market prefer to access and acquire their products? The notion of being ubiquitous is be targeted. Be where the customer is going to want you to be when they need your product. And of course, communication is in there. It's interesting, this is a 1990s framework where it talks about advertising as a dialogue. Roll forward to the social media era, the 4 Cs were a little bit ahead of their time in the ability for dialogue to be created around advertising communication. It's now a very evident part of what we do. There is, of course, what I refer to as the stealth mix from the American Marketing Association's 2007 definition. Create, communicate, deliver, and exchange. Technically, it's not a marketing mix, so if you do want to do this one, you are much less resourced, so I'm not going to detail it because it would be asking you to play a difficult assignment on super hard mode, blindfold and backwards. Not going to do it. Okay, conceptual theoretical argument time. Do we need a social marketing mix? Well, Ross Gordon, president of the Australian Association of Social Marketing, argued that yes, we do. So going through Gordon's 2012 article, this is the ASMA summary, AASM summary. The social product in this is a behavioural offer. It's a combination of intangibles and tangibles. It's the adoption of ideas and behaviours. But fundamentally, it's a behavioural offer. It's an offer to do something different from what you're currently doing. In price, this is again keeping to this thematic idea of what the audience has to pay. But Gordon also raises this element of the barriers that have to be overcome. So this is just expressly anticipating that in social marketing, because we're asking for change, change will have barriers. So we're looking at psychological costs, cultural, social, time loss, and a range of other elements that can stand between the desired behaviour and being able to implement that desired behaviour in practice. Place is distribution channel by any other device, but it's also interesting here is that it's both where behaviour change is being promoted and where change is encouraged and supported. I would add an addendum here is it's also where change is being expected to be performed. So it's not just about the get the idea to the market. Because social marketing requires you to change behaviour, you may need to act on this behaviour in new environments, and we need to make certain that those environments are supportive of our desired behaviours. It's no use asking people to cross the road at safe crossing points if there are no safe crossing points. If you want people to use level crossings and rail bridges, then we need to ensure that the environment has both of these elements before we go out and promote something. In promotion, we head over to talking about this from the point of view of how does behaviour change get communicated to the target audience. Again, the promotion mix shows up here, but key to this is that it's talking about a target audience. It needs to be supported by your market segmentation. So that's a block of the marketing mixes. And now, for that point, 5 years ago, where I sat down and went, well, what happens if you take Cedar and you take the marketing mix and you combine them? And this is going to be one of the exercises for you to think about, because this is actually just the basic 4x4. This is not actually extending this to examine how solution influences information. So you can do Cedar by Cedar, marketing mix by marketing mix, and then mix matrix, the 4x4. Fundamentally, what we're looking at here is to take away the idea that solution substitutes. Solution enables and enhances. The solution, information, value, and access is the customer viewpoint. It's the consumer side. Product, promotion, price, and place is the marketing managerial side, where we get to make the relevant decisions. So running across the table from top to bottom, solution and product together is a question of, does what we're offering, the physical product or the behavior or the idea or the experience, meet the need? Can we solve the problem with our product? And that's a question of, can the product do it alone, or does the product need augmentation from other elements of the mix? Promotion asks the question of, does the actual communication help solve the problem? Can our promotional messages be a solution in their own right? This is about positioning strategies, branding, brand communication, we can sell a message whilst we're selling a product. The solution can also come from the price itself. If you are presenting something as a luxury good, then what you are looking for is to communicate wealth through consumption at a luxury cost. So value comes from the price tag, from the price you paid. Place brings us up into the idea that solution can be found by location, and this is harking back to convenience, this is harking back to accessibility as well, that distribution can in itself create solutions. Information and product, this is the question of what does the product say about itself? What messages, information, implication comes from the product? Now, initially this is a little bit physical goods oriented, but there's also the question of adopting this idea makes you, if you adopt this idea or you perform this behavior, that's going to communicate something about you to other people. And is that the message you want to be sending about yourself to significant others? Information by promotion, this is where we start looking at the official communication, what is said by the organisation, said by the company. Price and information comes down to the assumptions you can make about a product based solely on how much does it cost. Do you imply value? Do you imply does cheap imply low quality? Does cheap imply a certain type of end user? What does the cost imply about the product? Similarly for place, distribution channels are communication tools. Where you can find something says a bit about that product. So there is a message to be sent through the distribution channels. And again, distribution channels, place can piggyback on the elements of segmentation so that this works together. It becomes a collective. That value, there's that information, where you access something becomes an important facet of how that audience is reached. And if you want to put exclusivity in just to give that audience an edge, so you've got a product for which there's an embarrassment threshold, making it available in private spaces is combining place and information, but making it available in public spaces is saying you're going to try and change the meaning of that product. Product by value, this is the question of, does the product itself communicate inherent worth? Do various features raise or lower the cost? For example, organic versus non-organic. So if you slap the word organic in front of it, does it raise the value of the product? Promotion does a similar thing on value. Can you raise and lower the social and financial costs of a product through how you promote it? Of course, price by value is the product worth it? Are you going to L'Oreal this and that won't happen overnight, or because I'm worth it? Are you going, does the cost incurred actually deliver value in its own right? Similarly for place, value, convenience versus exclusivity, both create value. They create different types of value. Lastly, on the access line, this is the big one. Can the customer find the solution you want them to find in the product you're offering them? That's the biggest one. There are certain, we refer to them as magic artifacts. If someone is carrying a product that they're meant to consume, if they are wearing a product that they're meant to use, if they're applying something to the surface of their skin, grinding it up and applying it to the surface of their skin that they're supposed to take internally, yes, they've got the product. Yes, they know that the product solves their problem. They're just not using the product correctly to solve that problem. Access and promotion is basically a question of how are we telling the customer to get the value out of the product and where to find the product and what instructions. Price and access is the costs that you have to incur to access and acquire the product. And also this is the question of, by price and access, if something is very cheap financially, but it raises huge social costs around it, are you limiting the access by keeping the price too low? And lastly, price, access and place is simply a question of, can you get the product you want to your customers in a way that your customers can get to it themselves? So the purpose of the mix matrix is to get you to start thinking about interaction effects. And specifically, this is C for by 4Ps. The difficult one is what I refer to as the Rubik's Cube of marketing. And that's where we took the mix matrix and brought in the AMA definition. So effectively, we created something nightmarish that we couldn't actually physically draw or map. And when I sat down and worked out the permutations and combinations I needed to write up, I walked away from it. But suffice to say is, if you think marketing has certain levels of complexity, there's a very good reason for that. So that's week 7 in a wrap. The keys to this week are definitely that this is the overview of the mixes, and for each individual class on the mix, it will be about what does the mix element contain and how does it interact with its companions as the lead driver. So you will do product by promotion and promotion by product, because both directions change what happens. So get ready to look at the mix not as a series of isolated parts, but as a holistic, combined, and thoroughly blended whole.